All right. So I want to welcome my friend Don Giannatti. And you know what, Don? I got to tell you this. When I started this pricing, we talked about it before I launched it. And when I talk about any of my pricing stuff, you're always one of the top people that I think about, if not the top, when we want to talk this topic, because you and I engage about this a lot, and it's, I think, both of our one of our favorite subjects because it's such a big subject. And we were talking about how many different ways you can approach this, and how what was your quote there about how it's hurting.
It's it's not just hurting cats, it's hurting mentally deficient cats.
And I think that's accurate, man.
It's like everything goes everywhere, and you can get a photograph made. Well, let's talk. Let me just use an example of a headshot.
Hmm.
Okay, so a model or wannabe model comes to a studio and they need a headshot, and from my experience all around the country, it's probably somewhere south or north of $200 and $250 for a headshot. Okay, some studios are more, whatever. You got a makeup artist that's extra, and a wardrobe person that's extra, but the photograph is a picture of a head, and it's nicely done for about $250.
Yeah.
If the client is Maybelline, it's still a headshot. You still got a makeup artist and a wardrobe, but it's a $25,000 photograph.
Right.
The
Right.
photograph isn't different. As a matter of fact, it could be the same model.
It could be.
And a matter of fact, the headshot might be better than the $25,000 shot. These are just variables. And when you're starting out, a photographer starting out, it's like, I mean, what do I do?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that, and really, it is perception and brand, your brand, and it really just comes down to that. You know, everybody, where is that difference? Why is it that? And we talked about this, I think, last time. One of my studio mates, you know, he bid like $5,000 for a job for a day, you know, and somebody else bid $50,000. And the fact is, you know, the $50,000 photographer didn't get it that time, but that $50,000 photographer does get jobs. And, you know, to make the same amount of money, you would just have to get 1 out of 10. But, you know, I rather work once rather than 10 times, I guess. You know, 10 times the amount of work is my studio mate who's charging 5 for the day. So, you know, it's about brand and perception, and for people to understand. I did a video on, you know, photographing for free and how you don't want to hurt your brand with that. Doesn't mean you never do anything like that, but you let them know how your value, and send them an invoice so they can see your value, so they don't go around referring the free photographer.
Can I make a comment there?
Yeah.
I totally get that, because I have told photographers, well, first of all, let me go, when I see people, photographers, and I'm almost tempted to put quotes there, but I'm not, say, oh, we never shoot for free. All I can say is, you lying SOB. I shot for free for decades. It was called testing. You'd get a model from the agency, you'd buy the film, you'd buy the developer, the paper, the time, the assistant to print it, so that you could get your pictures into her portfolio, because she's going to see more clients that day than you are ever going to see in a day.
Sure.
So it was this symbiotic relationship. We would do test shots for this company. We would do, when I owned the ad agency, we would put together entire campaigns just to pitch.
Yeah.
We spent $40,000 pitching a client once.
Sure.
We got the job, thank God. We were out of pocket 40 grand. Yeah, it was one of those afternoons, believe me. But it was, of course you have to do it. I would prefer, if you want to build your brand and you want to get out there and shoot for free. Just don't shoot for cheap. See, when you shoot for cheap, when you take a $10,000 job and you bid it at $2,000, you just move the bar, at least for that client, to $2,000.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be looking to pay $10,000 again. They're just going to look to be paying $2,000. If you do it for free, it's still a $10,000 job. You just gave it to them.
Yeah, right. Or,
That didn't hurt me.
as a, yeah. And as I've said in similar situations, look, they want to get their foot in the door and, okay, fine. Well, let them know here is the invoice and here's your 50% discount or something like that, that shows that this is still a $10,000 job. Now, we also have to remember, you and I may be able to sniff a $10,000 job, just by, looking at it. But a lot of people don't realize a $10,000 job. Or 20 or even 5,000. What is that? And that's an honest conversation for a photographer to have to figure out. And I think a lot of times that starts with understanding your cost of doing business, which I think a lot of photographers do not take the time to do, to understand how much they need to make an hour a day, a year, and then realistically figure out what they need to make per day. And that's part of the equation.
I'm not big on cost of doing business for photographers, and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
Cost of doing business is a commodity-driven way of looking at something. I have to sell X amount of cans of peas at this markup to keep my
right.
When that same headshot is up, you could do a $250 headshot today and a $7,000 headshot tomorrow because it's for a different usage, a different brand of client. It's hard to figure out what you're going to do, and we start going down the per hour pricing or the whatever. And I think the images have a value that that is not attached to how much time we spend or what gear
I'm totally on board. I'm a total per image pricing guy. I mean, that is my thing. Hourly and day rates for me, that's an internal number. Now, when I say, but where I come in on the cost of doing business is that's your baseline. That's what you have to charge to stay in business. Now, what is the usage? And Maybelline's usage is much different than the people at the mom and pop store. They want to put a flyer in the window, and understanding that, well, then the use and then your brand are two elements that you can add.
Absolutely.
So that's where I go. I just look at it as that's the minimum point. You need to understand that so you know that you got to charge at least this.
I think a lot of people don't do that. At least in my experience, a lot of people don't do it because the knowledge will scare them.
Yes.
And
that
so
is
they
a fair
choose,
statement.
instead of being scared, I just won't do it.
Right. And then you're out of business in a year.
If that.
I'm being optimistic.
And they look at that number, that cost of doing business. They look at that number and they think, oh my God, I'll never get there, because the only jobs they're doing at the time, maybe they're doing, and consumer shooters are probably worse than commercial shooters. Because if you open a commercial studio, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean to consumer shooters, but if you get to the point where you're opening a B2B commercial studio, you've done more homework than someone who's shooting babies and weddings, and they've been shooting the neighbors, and they just feel now it's time for me to monetize. You've got to a different level or a different place. You've had to, because you signed a lease. Right there, you got a challenge.
Right.
And if they do it and they look at that number, they go, oh my God, I'm only charging, $40 for a mini session, whatever the hell a mini session is. And they look at the numbers, like, oh, I have to work every day, 14 hours a day. And that scares them. So they don't want to do it.
Well,
the B2B guys, they think, how many clients do I need to get?
Yeah.
And the truth is, they shouldn't be looking for that. They should be looking for clients that will pay higher values. Everybody starts at one place, but you've got to move up and move up quickly. And that takes hard work.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think a lot of times, and this is a trap that a lot of people will find themselves in. And whether they're a consumer, shooting families, or a commercial photographer, whatever area they want to get into, but they say, I have a job right now, a part-time job, and I'm doing my photography, so I don't need that, to cover my overhead and all that. And then they really start enjoying it, and the office is looking pretty stale, and they're really, my dream is to become a full-time photographer. And they can never get there because they don't charge enough, because they've already set that price level and their referral base is for that price level. or they get out there and realize, again, I've told everybody I'll do it for $25, but I need, $300 for this photo. And no one that I talk to is willing to pay that much. But that's because all the people that are in your sphere have been referred and pointed to you as the $25 photographer.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to establish as high as you can, as soon as you can. And again, that cost of doing business element gets you there a little bit quicker just by understanding that knowledge. Whether you ignore it or not, at least you have the knowledge to make good decisions.
And that what you're talking about, really, it all comes back to that personal brand.
Yep.
If you've branded yourself as the $25 guy,
absolutely,
you're in trouble in that market. There's a photographer here in this market in Phoenix who I think is a very, very good photographer, but he's been struggling for 20 years. He didn't price himself right. He takes the wrong job. Sometimes saying no to a job can be very beneficial. You have to understand what you're doing. And he said, well, what should I do? And I said, move. Because in this market, you're always going to be that guy.
Oh, sure.
And you're better than that now, but no one is going to go, wow, you're a lot better. They still see you as that guy.
Right. And I know I've shared this before, is that the client I had from 20 years ago who will still call every once in a while. They've seen my work on billboards. They know it's mine. They've seen my work in magazines. They know it's mine. But could you please shoot the free charity coming up? We don't have a budget. Now, I know they have projects with a budget, but I don't get called for those because 20 years ago, the relationship started, well, hey, to get my foot in the door, I'll do your charity event at no charge or cheap or for expenses that probably is film at the time, whatever it may be. And that's where I'm pegged. And it does not matter what I've accomplished since.
A photographer in New York City told me, after I had been to New York City, failed and moved home, told me one of the things about shooting fashion in New York, it's the untold secret. If you shoot the back pages of the magazines, the flatter abs in 8 weeks. Right. I'm familiar with that because I shot it. Flatter ab with one model, half day on the beach, Coney Island, boom, and 6 shots runs in the back, and you go, oh, I'm in glamour. Now you're in the back pages, Jack, and you ain't never gonna move to the front pages.
Interesting.
Never. It is done. You have shot it. So
Don, in your opinion, where would you start if you had to start today? Today, it's all over. All your great experience out the window.
We're talking about pricing?
Yeah. If you were going to develop your business with pricing, how would you approach it today? You said you're not as big a fan of cost of doing business, but how would you approach it as a new photographer?
I should clarify. I'm a fan of knowing that number.
Right.
But I'm not a fan of trying to figure out how many hours at what rate I need to do that. I'm a bigger fan of finding higher paying clients to cover it.
Okay, that's a fair statement.
Yeah. So I think that today, understanding that business has changed a lot, and you said I'm not going to bring my experience as a photographer, but I am going to bring my experience as a businessman and say the first thing I would do is do some very, very targeted research. Mm-hmm. What are other people in the areas I want to work in? What are they getting for what they do? Okay. In other words, I want to know, I see photographs in Phoenix magazine. I'd like to know, that looks pretty cool. I'd like to shoot for Phoenix magazine. How much do they pay? Right. If they pay $0, which is actually what they pay, I want to know that. If they're paying $500 an image, I want to know that. I need to know what the advertising shooters are getting in town for shooting billboards for new home projects, or shooting brochures for food makers in Scottsdale, or people who are packaging candies and stuff. I want to know those numbers. Right. I'm going to have to dig and do some research. So we have a wall to climb now, because if I just go out there, the phone rings, I don't know what to say. I can say, well, gosh, how about $50 an hour? If I've been working at Starbucks, $50 an hour.
Sounds awesome.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been working for $12.50 an hour, so let's bring it on. I'm not thinking that I'm not going to get $50 an hour, 8 hours a day,
Right.
5 days a week.
Right. Right.
And that hour.
That's a big point, Don. I mean, a lot of people see that big number, but they don't properly divide it by 40, or whatever. They're just
No, they don't. And
they're now working for less than minimum wage.
Oh, way less.
Yeah.
I mean, even that shot that they did, they drove to Scottsdale. That took 45 minutes. They did the shot that took an hour. Then they drove back. That's another 45 minutes. Then they've got to take it off the camera, put it in Lightroom, do the stuff, find out that they forgot to check if the backlight was going off. Now they've got to really, pretty soon it's $8 an hour. And you have also, that time you just spent doing that, you have not spent finding another client.
Right. Good point.
You are dead in the water or marketing, dead in the water or marketing. So I would do that research, and then I would come in at higher than middle. I'm not going to come at the high, but I'm not going to come in at the middle, and I'm certainly not going to come in at the low. One of the things that photographers say, and you've heard it said, "Oh, I'm just new, so I'm not going to charge them as much."
Right.
So
the value of the photograph is still the same. If
the photograph is good enough for them to run it in the magazine or to put on their website, it's worth. The photograph doesn't matter who took it or whether you're new, unless the advertisers start running. Here's our ad. Down at the bottom of the little thing says, "We're really sorry about this ad. It was a new guy." We're running this ad. We're running this ad in 17 different magazines, so our ad buy per month is around $85,000, but we saved $370 with this new guy. So cut us some slack. That's never going to happen.
That's a good point. That's good stuff. All right, Don. Hey, you know what? We are going to chat again, I assure you, because I like talking to you about this stuff. There are many topics to share, and I'm probably going to consult you after the video is off on maybe some topics that we can talk about in the future days.
Sure.
But hey, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show, and this will come on Friday.
All right. Thanks, man.